Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for tonight's event, Context, Form, and Equity with award-winning landscape architect, Shane Coen. I'm Jamie Boyer. I'm the Vice President for Education here at the New York Botanical Garden, and I'm excited to have you all join us for tonight's talk. This lecture is the second in this year's Landscape Design Portfolio Series, made possible by Monica Heimbold's generous sponsorship. Thank you, Monica, for your support over the years. As we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that the New York Botanical Garden is located in the ancestral homeland of the Lenape Delaware people. We honor them and acknowledge their displacement, dispossession, and continued presence. In addition to today's program, the New York Botanical Garden offers many classes, workshops, and public lectures in landscape design, horticulture, gardening, and more. Our winter classes will be available for registration in early November, so check out the website for those updates. Laura Stimson's lecture on wildness, lost landscapes, and belonging will be our final lecture in the portfolio series, and that'll be taking place online on November 19th. Now I'd like to introduce Susan Coen. Susan is the coordinator of our landscape design certification program. Since 1998, Susan has been instrumental in bringing outstanding landscape architects from around the world to share their design visions with a New York audience through our landscape design portfolio series. Thank you, Susan, for all that you do for NYBG, our students, and on the larger community. Susan.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you to the excellent continuing education staff, which has worked to make this series a success for almost 3 decades. And parenthetically, now that we're online, we reach even more than a New York City area audience, and we're really thrilled about that. And speaking about a wide reach, over the years, we've been joined by speakers from throughout the US, as well as Canada, Brazil, Sweden, Scotland, England, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Spain, China, and Japan. This year, we are stretching across the United States, and tonight's speaker, Shane Coen, comes to us from Minneapolis, though as you will see, his projects extend well beyond Minnesota's borders. Shane is the founder and CEO of Coen and Partners, a 70-person firm with a wide-ranging practice, known for collaborating on some of the most complex landscapes in the world. In addition to practicing landscape architecture, Shane has lectured and taught extensively, including at Harvard's Graduate School of Design. He is the recipient of the very prestigious Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian National Design Award. And as I hope he will mention, he is also a dedicated yoga practitioner. Welcome, Shane.
Thank you, Susan. And it's so great to be with everybody. When Susan asked me to do this, I said, can it be in person? And she explained that the series was an online series. And at first, I love connecting with people so much. So much of the energy and the exchange, often in lectures, is in person. But I wanted to flip that on its head when that thought came in and said, you know what? Let's all just take a moment and imagine every person that's on here being able to join from anywhere, and that we can come together over our shared passion around landscape architecture and the earth and its ability to bring people together and connect just like we are. So I'm super grateful to be here. We believe that landscape architecture in this exact moment is uniquely positioned to address cultural and earth equity issues together. So we believe in putting our feet on the ground and uncovering strategies to shape the land while we honor the people and the earth. We're a global practice, and we really leaned into what the world was telling us in 2020. And so we have about half of our team in Minneapolis, and the rest is dispersed around the country, including a significant portion in the Middle East. We also have an office in Riyadh and in Minneapolis. So we're really investing in working in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia right now. We have 3 studios. One is the site, campus, and hospitality, which is really the work that the office was founded on. Another division is cultural and ecological tourism, which focuses on ecologically sensitive areas and culturally sensitive areas. And then an urban infrastructure studio that focuses on these kind of massive projects that reach across cities and in bring together, usually removing infrastructure. We founded with this idea that all projects have to be discovered with our feet on the ground. And this was the very first principle that we agreed on when we founded, when John Stumpf and I founded 33 years ago. And we've never started a project without putting our feet on the ground. Even in the middle of the pandemic, we traveled for great distances to get there and to feel the earth and to listen to what she was telling us. Why do we do that? After we listen to the earth, we go into a deep research about the earth and the people that were there before and the animals to uncover meaningful stories that will make the work and the project that we're doing specific to the context and specific to the exact place that we're studying. I don't ever want to give a lecture without saying thank you to the great industrial designer Bill Stumpf, who he gave his son and I an office with free rent for 7 years because I did not have any money to open a practice, and none of that could have happened without the great generosity of Bill. And I hope to always extend that generosity myself. We found it on a very simple set of principles. And I believe when you open a practice, that's the most important thing you can do. Those principles have held true today, and they've lived on, and some of them have expanded. Simplicity, abstracted nature, meaning we never try to recreate nature. We don't believe that you can recreate the magic that Mother Earth puts down. Very deliberate geometries, honest geometries, that these are human-made interventions. A seamless dialogue with the architecture, strong edges, have fun with rhythm and repetition, just like in music, work with materials of great integrity that will last and pass the test of time, and focus on craft and beauty. So as I flip through these early projects and all the projects today, I invite you to think about those principles and let us know if we've held true to those principles. The firm started out by really placing a lot of architecture on the land. And we always believed that the horizontal and the vertical was celebrated, never by planting, but by a surface that you can walk around. And we pulled the gardens out. This allowed us to frame views, extend the geometry of the architecture out, and bring nature forward with a simple set of beautiful materials. The indoor extends outdoors. You're not quite sure where the architecture ends and the landscape begins. Surprises unveil themselves. Deliberate geometries unfold across simple palettes. Strong edges, beauty, surprises. Rhythm and repetition is something so fun to play with cactus. And straight lines piercing through nature, we believe celebrates nature in a way so much more than when we try to follow her contours. In the urban context, those same principles hold true of simplicity, materiality, abstracted nature, working within architecture, and creating places for people to connect. Materiality and simplicity. So what happens when you get invited to test that brand and that scale that you've been doing for 25 years onto a scale that reaches across an entire city? We've always believed in taking risk. It's one thing we've always done, is we're always willing to take a risk, and we've been rewarded by doing that. About 10 years ago, we got invited to design a master plan for the longest park in the world. It's 100 miles long. Imagine a park from the New York Botanical Garden all the way to New Haven and almost back. That's about 120, about 4 city blocks wide. And we went into a negotiation on how a little firm from Minnesota would actually do a project like that. We knew it was going to be about collaboration, putting our feet on the ground. This is the utility corridor that we actually buried. And we reduced a massive highway down to a small highway with a park in the middle. So as I flip through these images, I don't have time or intention to go into the whole project. It's too much, but think about the principles that I talked about. We took a big risk and took an RFP that was sent to us and proposed a lot more. We proposed 6 transformations, including an entire economic strategy for the park. We proposed that the water would strive to be 100% recycled, that we would introduce arts and cultural venues across this entire park, that we would reduce travel time by 65%. And the most important one is we knew if we did this park right, that it would mean 50% additional open space for everyone in the city, which is a city of 8 million people in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Here's the park. On the 2 ends, it stretches across a nature preserve and a great desert dune park. And in the middle, 40 kilometers that pierces right through the middle of this city. We're talking about 120,000 new trees, 3.5 million square meters of open space. This is a park that 2 million people can get to within 10 minutes on a bike or walking. So we knew this was something we had to do. And we had to do it for the people because they simply, at that time, did not have an open space system. This is it. This is the urban section that reaches for 40 straight kilometers, and then it reaches out into the neighborhoods, into a series of livable neighborhoods that we wrote a code with Foster and partners for how that would get developed. Because as we saw with the High Line, great design creates development, it creates neighborhoods, it creates community. We started in a nature preserve that Burl Happold had already designed. And the real project was to just pierce through. This whole project was about wellness and movement and access, 100% access for everybody, both from an accessibility standpoint, as well as everyone welcome in. So we did a professional bike path, a leisure bike path, and a walking path, and a whole new restoration project. One of the most beautiful elements was these psychopavilions that were designed by Eldorado Architecture that are made out of thin limestone fins. This is actually a wayfinding strategy. For when you see one of these, you know there's community there. You know there's a place to get in the shade and rest and have something to drink. And these happen along the whole 120 kilometers. As we left the nature preserve, we had to reach over a highway of 12 lanes and land into the first urban section, which was a teeny little section called the Promenade. So this cycle bridge, also designed in collaboration with Eldorado Architecture, had a lane for walking and a lane for biking. And this is just getting ready to open. So these are in construction photographs, but it reaches up over the city, and the simplicity of the form and the kind of gold that celebrates the color, really a color that's very rich and found in Najdi architecture. And it lands people in this first section. This will be opening soon. What the whole urban section is about is connecting people to each other and to nature. It's about a respite in the middle of a city. So there's always these garden rooms for people to sit, as they like to often visit parks in large numbers. And we worked with Saudi artists through the whole thing as this floating sculptural element in the middle. Was by this incredible woman from Jeddah. Here's another psychopavilion, and you see the tower designed by a Saudi artist of Abdullah Nasser Garam, who saved one of the light poles that we were burying and created an icon that can be seen anywhere in the city. So the first arts district was envisioned with 1,000 trees and 264,000 of open space. But here you see the principles of kind of simplicity and material integrity, with the whole arts, the only section of the arts of the actual program being built in the park, always connected back to this iconic art installation in this plaza and this bridge that takes you over the topography and drops you down. framing incredible views and bringing people together to celebrate art and culture and people and nature. As we crossed into the urban wadi, we realized we had an opportunity to sink the park, just like Paul Friedberg and Halprin used to do, away from the noise of the city for about a 4-kilometer section. We proposed 8,000 trees and a whole system that was about 4 meters down so the traffic could pass above and the people could pass above. But yet there was a park below. And this was the lowest part of the park where the water collected, and we recycled all the water, ran it through a treatment facility, and recycle it into this system. All of the forms are rooted in the traditional forms found in Najdi architects, but done in a way that was not copying the historic, but actually celebrating it with timeless moves. The lowest point of the park is called the convergence, and the edges are marked super strong by these incredible concrete buttresses and this canopy and these bridges that take you across. And even though everything is completely geometric here, it's that the softness of the plants and the trees that bring that organic quality to the landscape. In the narrows, you can boat. As we moved into the entertainment and athletic district, this was kind of the centerpiece of activity and movement and transit-oriented development. 8,000 trees, an incredible amount of entertainment and cultural venues and athletic fields. And the cycle path is actually elevated. So you have these kind of monumental gestures up and down, and you're riding above the park, and you can also ride through the park. This whole park is always designed around movement, exercise, and encouraging kind of connection with each other in nature. So activities kind of weave in and out of different hard and soft spaces. The athletic, this is the one section where we have really significant athletic fields for the neighborhoods to come, and full-size soccer pitches and junior-sized soccer pitches with the cycle pavilion above. And the centers are dense and rich with architecture and shadow and trees, and you can bike right through the center of the TODs, of the transit-oriented developments. And then you end up out in the desert again, in a part of the desert that was sacred in the past, but all the dunes had been eroded over time. And we were to create a professional cycling venue out there. And so as we studied the landscape, we came up with a couple significant ideas. The first one was the professional racing track would be shaped in a very ancient form of civilization of the Middle East, and in Saudi Arabia specifically, called the Najd flower. And that system would be seen from above when you fly in and out of Riyadh. This is one of the tips of the petals as we were inspecting it about a couple months ago. And we started working with a desert ecologist to bring the sand dunes back that had eroded. And he came up with a simple idea where we'd use these thatched palms and grids that would catch the sand and create these sand dunes. They're working way better than we could imagine. And there's this kind of beautiful abstraction that's happening here between the grid of the dune creation and the movement of wind and sand, bringing us back to the magic of Mother Nature. When you're flying in and out of Riyadh these days, you see the flower in its form. It'll be opening soon. And I have to say, I cannot wait to ride my bike around this flower. It just won the highest award in the kingdom. And on the left is the CEO of the Sports Boulevard Foundation, the incredible leader, woman Jane McGivern, and then the president of the Ministry of Culture Architecture Division, Dr. Samaya. That's my partner, Robin, and Mackenzie on the right. This was just about a month ago that the master plan was recognized as a truly transformational project. We love watching the cultural revolution there, and we have watched the entire thing. And so we decided to not just go there for work, but to open an office there and really embed ourselves in the place as a true commitment and a gesture of gratitude for the incredible opportunity that was given to us to design this park for the people. So we're going to step back and scale now and take a breath after seeing that kind of massive scale to Paul Friedberg's work, actually, and a collaboration with Paul Friedberg, even though he wasn't involved in the project. PV Plaza. We've all seen these incredible sunken historic landscapes. And I have to say, I never fully understood the magic of them. In Minneapolis, Lawrence Halprin designed the Nicollet Mall and the Loring Greenway, and Paul Friedberg designed PV Plaza. And PV Plaza was really the heartbeat of Minneapolis. I mean, this was it. After work, you came down here, there was music happening in the plaza. It was sunken below the noise of the city. The water took out the noise of the city. I used to see these kind of brutalist landscapes all the time, and I didn't understand the magic of them until we got this project. The significance of this project is we've set a precedent so the others and with the Cultural Landscape Foundation. So they were going to demolish this park, and the Cultural Landscape Foundation actually sued the city of Minneapolis and got the plaza on the National Historic Register. And then an RFP went out, and we were hired to bring back the magic of this incredible place, but make it accessible. So what does that mean in a historic landscape? It means for us, it meant we spent a lot of time in that plaza. And we studied the character defining elements that Paul Friedberg so magically created. And I have to tell you, the horizontality and the contrasted with the vertical elements and the sound of falling water started to come to life to us as we started to imagine it coming in ways that I had never before seen these magical landscapes. The problem was those landscapes were designed at a time when they were not handicap accessible, and they were not welcoming everybody in. So the idea was simple. Bring back the magic, restore the canopy of trees, make it accessible, make it a place where everybody can come and enjoy and take it into the future. So we studied the plaza carefully, and we found that there was a section of the plaza that had been destroyed. And we knew that was the place that we could integrate an accessible ramp. And we went from by putting that ramp in, and the basin was 17 inches deep, and we raised it to a 1/4 inch. Those two moves took a plaza that was only 2.3% accessible to 85% accessible. To us, this was a huge win. As we studied the lines, we integrated that in a way that we believed Paul would be proud. So then we looked at the basin. Basin, as I said, was between 17 and 10 inches deep, and we proposed to raise it to a 1/4 inch. And this is important because it set a precedent for historic renovations. At first, the historic people were not in favor of this, but they are now. It's a massive sustainability move too. We went from a plaza that took 62,000 gallons to fill to 14,000 gallons. It only takes 15 minutes to drain this. And the rest of the plaza we did in permeable surfaces, so we were not taxing the storm system. So what the result is this beautiful plaza that anybody can access and dance in the water and move through the water. We can drain it in 15 minutes, and we can have an event the way that Paul always envisioned it, but that everybody can attend. It has truly been one of the more rewarding projects that I wasn't expecting. We brought back these canisters that carry the water up, and no one even knew they were stainless steel. They're absolutely stunning. The sound of falling water completely takes out the noise of the city. It's an absolute magnet for people to come together. The reflective quality that was always there still works with a 1/4 inch of water. And we restored these magnificent lights that were installed. And so it was really just a beautiful gift. And Sarah and I got married here right after it opened. We wanted to be the first people that got married here. So we slipped in. We didn't even get a permit and had a ceremony right in the middle of it. And we'll always remember it as a truly magical place. The next project is a project in Rochester, Minnesota, heart of the city, and Discovery Walk. And this was a game changer because it happened during 2020 and 2021, and it also happened at the time of George Floyd's murder. So the whole idea here is the DMC, Destination Medical Center, got funding from the state of Minnesota, recognizing that people come from all over the world to go to the Mayo Clinic, but that the city and public realm did not reflect the world-class movement that happened here. And so as to kind of recreate the public realm. The building on the left is the Gonda building. This is where people come to get diagnosed, and this is where births and first breaths and last breaths, a lot happened here, and they just didn't have a sacred landscape to move out into. So we had an incredible public process with the stakeholders, defining the principles, which was really about making it big, but keeping it small, making it about healing, green, really make it art and connected. And the three big principles were year-round use, flexible program, and art, but art in a big way. We did standard community engagement, but we also did a lot of pop-ups out on the street. We built furniture. We invited kids down to test murals. We tested ideas that we thought were going to be winners, and the community said they weren't. And so we changed, and we designed a place that was reflective of the community process. We also wanted to do something super unique with the artists. So instead of inviting them in at the end of the project, we invited them in at the beginning. So we started working with Raphael Lozano-Hemmer, and he proposed to take the lights overhead. Usually Raphael's work is voice or touch activated, which was the case here. We worked with Inigo from Chicago, who is such an incredible human. And he wanted to actually, he was the only one that wanted to do an object to be a counterpoint to the existing sculpture that we were saving, and that you would see the reflection of yourself as you move back and forth around this beautiful sculpture. Anne Hamilton, what a delight. She said, I want to write a poem across the whole floor. And she started writing a very beautiful poem about time and people's connection to time and movement. And she started working with a local artist who was working with the Mayo Clinic, and got the Mayo Clinic to agree. They have a computer system that registers when anybody takes their first breath, so when a baby is born, or their last breath, an inhale or an exhale. And he proposed to take that computer, and when somebody inhales or exhales for the first or last time, fog emerges from that poem and from that water feature. There was a lot of people that only wanted to do the inhale, the birth, but the DNC held true to the vision, and they got that built. But in the middle of the project, George Floyd was murdered. And we all took a big step back and said, what does this mean? What does this mean to the work that we're doing? What does this mean to our project? Gwen Westerman was asked to rethink her poem, and she reached out. Anne Hamilton was asked to rethink her poem, and she reached out to Gwen Westerman, an incredible Lakota artist, an educator, and historian, who together they wrote a new poem that was about the Dakota's connection to this land. And this poem now stretches across the floor. It goes in and out of the water. And when somebody takes their first breath or last breath, fog quietly rises from the plaza. And I promise you, everybody stops and they wonder what breath that was. We designed a stage that can be pulled apart, embracing the challenge to make it flexible. It's incredible to watch the activity of people here. Just that little simple scrim of water brings people together and allows them to connect in a way to life with these incredible art installations that were done with each of these beautiful artists. We also created a series of forest rooms. We took a really car-centric street, stripped it down, made it a curbless street, and made it all about the pedestrians in a series of forest rooms. And then we reached down another street, which was actually Rochester's kind of most underutilized street, and kind of all the buses parked there. But it was really important because it connected the heart of the city, and it reached the Soldiers Field, a really important public park. So we proposed to really reduce the traffic by about 75%, just into a simple, teeny little 2-lane road so that we could maximize the green space. This just opened. It was really supposed to be about nature and community and bringing people together and playing. Anytime you're selling a park, we can't talk about just the pretty stuff. the city was super smart, and they decided to redo all the infrastructure when we ripped out the road. And so we sold this to the public by talking about the infrastructure that was under. It was 3 times the cost of what we put on the ground. So this underutilized street became this totally vibrant new corridor. This time we worked with local artists that had never before worked in the public realm. We wanted to give them the opportunity to redefine to make a career defining moment. And Sophia and Ayub's installations happened. Sophia designed these gorgeous lights that rise and fall with the topography based upon the incredible topography that's found within the driftless region. And Ayub wanted to focus on a series of positive messages at a time when the world was filled with so many negative ones. So this simple little street now stretches down and connects Soldiers Field to the Mayo Clinic. Ayub's benches always brighten people's day by these kind of positive messages. And Sophia's lights go from, I think, 17 feet down to 3 feet based upon how the earth is rising and falling. They all come in at the same time every day. You can't help but smile when you walk down these streets and read these messages. The canopies are invitations for people to come and sit and connect. We did a series of geological installations abstracting nature that are really about celebrating the driftless region in the Zumbro River Valley. We incorporated play. These projects changed the way we started to think. And we asked ourselves, what is the role of the landscape architect with this, the equity, the conversations around equity? And we said, we came up with this idea of a project called Healing Landscape, which is a completely pro bono project that we've been working on for about 2.5 years. And we're getting ready to unveil to the city of Minneapolis. What we knew is that we were committed to listening to what the world was saying. We wanted to do something meaningful that was more than scholarships, and which are super important, but we wanted to come up with a new lens for a new urban design lens for landscape architecture based upon equity. I was listening to this incredible podcast, Seen on Radio. There's a chapter, an episode called Seeing White, that's about what we see as a white person. And it really shifted my thinking. And my partner, Mackenzie Wellham, and I started asking that question. We started having conversations about a city that's silent about its history, and that silence equals violence. We said, how do we support and contribute to inequity in the places that we design? What can we do that disrupts this pattern of supporting inequity? How could we gather contextual stories and oral histories that are missing from a city and tell those in a new public open space system by owning the whole story of our cities at scale? We could bring people together and heal. But we knew we didn't want to just be about people because we've been equally harmful to the earth. So we wanted to pursue cultural and earth equity together to tell a story about change and the future. So we took Minneapolis. We reached out to our clients, and we fundraised for a group to create a BIPOC panel that would collaborate with us on this idea. We wanted to research, gather stories, map the stories, make connections, and see if we could create a whole new idea for urban space, urban design. This information is available to all of us. This can be done in any city. There was wealth consolidation, urban renewal, native land that was stolen, as we all know. And all of those stories are actually available to us. And then they're available by talking to the people that are still alive in these cities. So we started with of course, the indigenous people, because they were here first. And Gwen Westerman, who we worked with in the heart of the city, helped us map out the stories of the seasonal migration of the Dakota people. She helped us map out there was more stories than you could ever map, but there was a pattern that they followed the rivers and the water bodies. She told us the stories about how the land was taken and how the rivers were stolen and their magic was taken away. She told us stories of how the wealth transfer actually happened. And we said, Gwen, let's pick a spot. Let's do a test study. And, these aren't actual designs, but these are meant, the next 5 ideas we'll show you are ideas that we'll show to the city to show this is how it could be done. This is what we could do. So she said, it's the Bidote. Of course, it's where the Mississippi and the Minnesota River come together. This is this most sacred spot that we had. This is it. The irony in this is we marched thousands of Dakota people, hundreds of miles, imprisoned them in a camp right underneath Fort Snelling and raped and killed many of them. And Gwen said, let's design something where the people come out of the nature, where they're part of nature, because the Dakota knew they were part of nature. They knew they were an integral part of nature, not separate from nature. Let's design something that you're not quite sure, are they people or are they nature, and have them emerge out of the forest and into the water. And so together we created this very simple installation to say, this is what could be. This is how we could honor this story. So then we started mapping all the immigrants in Minneapolis when they came in. We're all immigrants, every single one of us. We started looking at all the language around racial covenants and exclusionary action. We have one of the greatest park systems in Minneapolis, but as we dug into it, it was very clear this was a park system about wealth consolidation and division. This was completely targeted on the wealth. Even tactics of fear were brought about to try to get this park system to happen. And as we overlaid those against the redlining that happened in our city, it was very, very clear what happened here, and the story is not being told. The highway planning is the same thing. It was completely designed to cut off neighborhoods. And so as we talked to, and then of course, urban renewal and erasure. So one of our panel members, this incredible African-American judge, said, I want to do a story about the park that was destroyed that I lived right beside. So 35W was put in, and there was an incredible right through a neighborhood. It was redesigned at the last minute without telling the people, and it went right through a cherished African-American park and neighborhood and displaced all these people that Lejeune lived in. So our idea working with Lejeune was, let's reconnect these two sides with these incredible, some sort of really sculptural moves and bridges, and let's take those sound walls that have really been about a barrier between the highway and the other, this side and the other side, and let's create these new pocket parks. Let's re-envision how a highway and a sound wall can actually be seen and turn it into a sculpture about movement and play and connection. This is a very simple thing we could do in every city. We spend all these monies on these sound walls. For goodness sakes, they could just be very simple, beautiful things that bring people together. And we could reimagine all the streets that are next to them. Camille Maddox is this incredible young woman who's writing a story about African Americans in North Minneapolis and the incredible history and rich stories that happened in Minneapolis, and music and culture. And we started mapping out, and we were all committed to mapping out all the positive stories as well as the tragedies. And she's got a book that's coming out that's, really going to be incredible. And the stories of North Minneapolis are just so, so rich. And we started to map all of them out. And one of the stories that came forward was there was a street called Plymouth Avenue. And if you were Jewish or African American and you took a step on this street, you were beaten by the Minneapolis police. Up until the time of the riots in '67. And Prince lived right on that street, by that street, and he did a street concert in protest to this. And so we said, okay, let's show the city what we could do here to kind of celebrate it. There was an amazing little building called The Way where all the community gathered and had peaceful gatherings, as well as where they gathered for the racial uprising. Let's bring that back. Let's bring back where Prince had the concert. Let's really get together with the neighborhood and design a street that will forever celebrate what the stories that happened in this neighborhood and give back. Let's invest in a new way here. And this one we just finished last week. We have an incredible Somalian population in Minneapolis, but yet there's no neighborhood that's really dedicated to celebrating all the contributions they make to our city and their incredible culture. But a lot of them live here in the East Bank. And so we started studying, and what we found was this is so interesting because the neighborhood spans between these two highways that were designed to divide and erase. And it's filled with cultural art and music venues. So let's study the fabrics and the colors of the Somalian people. Let's have meetings with them. Let's create some gateways that really celebrate that you're passing in, you're coming into a new district where we can have markets and food and celebrations and celebrate the Somalian people. We anchor it by these great musical districts and kind of reimagine what the street can be, and these high rises that actually won a National Architecture Award kind of bring back the vibrancy and beautiful colors and take the Somalian colors and wrap them down the buildings and into the plazas and create this fabric that weaves in and out. So again, these aren't like final designs, they're thought-provoking ideas to show any city that we can rethink the way a city is planned based upon the incredible stories that happen, cultural and in earth. We can stitch the communities together, and we can really have that have been impacted by erasure, and we can connect people to a new open space system that actually tells the truth. So we believe this is a new vision for change. We believe it's where the profession is going, and it allows us to connect people to the earth and to each other. Thank you so much for letting me share this with you tonight. It was a super honor, and I loved being with you.
That was absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Shane. Not only a beautiful, beautiful work, but it's really wonderful to see you guys asking some very tough questions and responding to some really important things that are going on in society, culture as a whole. We do have some questions for you, so if you have some time.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
One that we like to ask lots of our speakers is we're always very interested in your origin story. So how did you get started in landscape architecture? What's your start there?
It's a good question because landscape architecture is, we're really working hard to try to bring lots of people into it. It's a profession that is really changing, and the reach is changing. But I had a beautiful experience. My father was an artist, and he taught me a lot. He taught me to see, actually, to really see the land. But he was kind of intimidating. He's a great artist, Don Coen, and I loved to paint, but I couldn't imagine like kind of following in those footsteps. My freshman year in college, I was studying things that I really didn't want to study. And I went over to a friend's house at night, and he was building this model of this park. And he was building it, looking, and I started asking him questions. And I had this thought that you could paint with the earth. And I said it out loud. I was like, oh my God, you're painting with the earth. And that was it. I moved to Massachusetts and enrolled in landscape architecture at UMass.
It's all history from there.
That was it. Yeah, that was it. I've never looked back. And I have been, one thing I didn't say that I do want to say is that when you do work like this, thousands and thousands and thousands of talented people touch it. From the people that have worked with us at Coen Partners to the clients to collaborators. I mean, it's just, there's no possible way to pay respect to everybody. But I do want to acknowledge every single person because these projects take so many talented, passionate people. Yeah.
Well, maybe on that topic, it does seem like working together and collaboration is huge in your work. I mean, I can only imagine where you start with 100-mile long garden in Saudi Arabia. But
Yeah.
when you look at collaboration, the collaborations you've done over the years, anywhere, like what are some takeaways? Like what are some of like your most memorable aspects of those collaborations?
I mean, I think the big takeaway right now and I think it's a global topic, not just to landscape architecture, is we need to create change in the world. We really do. And I believe that landscape architecture is one of these professions that can make significant change. We have moved away from the idea of competing against firms, other landscape architects, and actually inviting them into projects, as well as cross-disciplinary across the board. Because if we get together and bring more people together, and Pete Walker's done this in the past as well, people have done this in the past, but we believe that the cross collaboration should happen within the profession, and of course, all of the architects and engineers. And it's really about valuing what people can bring. I mean, we bring a professional photographer now on our initial site visits always, and we always make sure they're from that region, so that they can capture the magic of a place from the very beginning. And then we keep them through the whole project, and we use their photography to tell a story. I love that. We just started doing that recently, and we'll never go back. So to me, it's just embracing the spirit. It's bringing the artist in from the beginning. That was a game changer for us. Really, really meaningful to all those years of working in the 1% for the arts, and you kind of bring in an artist at the end. They're not integrated. And when we brought him in at the beginning of Heart of the City, they owned it, and the project was so much more rich.
That's great. Okay, some questions that people have sent in. Enough with my questions. I'm sure I'll have more. But Catherine asks, when you were talking about repetition in your plantings,
Yeah.
how do you deal with a few plants in a mass planting that die and create a hole in the landscape?
Right. I get asked that question a lot by city
I'm sure you do.
by city arborists, right? And thank God they didn't ask that question at like Villa d'Este, right? I mean, some of the greatest gardens in the world are monocultures, and there have been a lot of devastation, right, by the elms that have been that we've lost. So I really think it's important that we recognize the history, and there are ways to interrupt that street, but that monoculture. But it's also, I don't think it should take away from. I don't think that means that you never do it. Right. I think that it's very important that the simplicity of these ideas, but I do think we need to rethink it. I mean, you can interrupt a pattern by just you can plant 10 oaks and 2 maples, and you can stop those roots from touching, right? And so it's, I think it's a great question. When I started, I used to be really regimented about it and said, if you want to have 5 plants, you have to have 5 acres. That was a joke. But we're not now. I mean, we live in a diverse ecology. We want the soil to be as healthy as possible. And so, we're working with the soil, we're working with species. There is greatness in diversity. So, we're shifting, honestly, we're shifting with the times. We're still doing it in principles of simplicity and not abstracting nature, but we are bringing in quite a bit more diversity into our plant palettes.
And if there were like plantings underneath a tree, which were using repetition and some of them died, you just sort of embrace that as part of the process, or?
Sometimes, or we transition as the tree grows and more shade is created. You're never, gardens take
Right,
care
they're gonna
of
change over
time. I
time.
mean, you're always, people say they want a maintenance-free garden, and it's like, I'm not sure that exists, but but we can really minimize, create really rugged and bulletproof landscapes best we can. But there's always that adaptation, that's for sure.
Gotcha. Question from Natalie. How hard was it to underground the transmission lines? There are so many green spaces in the US that would benefit from the same engineer.
Oh, wouldn't it though? hard.
Especially 100 miles.
Yeah, well, there was a whole maze of utilities under there, like there are in most cities, right? So you really got to get a great civil engineer. We worked with TIPSA engineers, and they're great friends and collaborators of ours. And it's a big puzzle. Even, I remember, just doing that work that in Discovery Walk, getting the new utilities put in there was, you're moving through all sorts of things. But it is totally done. And the most important thing, I believe, is that, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a landscape architect, I really, really believe this. If it's a landscape architecture-led project, the civil engineers have to lead with that infrastructure discovery before the design happens. So we have to hold ourselves back. We have to do the mapping of that underground, because everything when we bury something that significant, it's going to impact what's above. And there's all sorts of rules about what you can plant on it. So you got to figure that route out and then do the design afterwards. And we didn't do that all the way. We did it in the later stages of the project. We kind of tried to do it in tandem. So we've learned, I mean, as you can imagine, we have tens of thousands of sheets. We've learned so much from doing a project like that. It's hard to even describe, because we actually did construction documents. A lot of people that go to foreign countries, a lot of landscape architects do not. They hire a local firm to do the technical documents. We did not. We did all the documentation for the park, and it's an enormous amount of drawings and coordination. But we grew as a firm, and we think we're ready to take on, in any project in the world, and bring this kind of change to any city. And you're right, those, removing those corridors. The other thing I'll say is we had to develop an economic strategy. So the RFP came out, it didn't have that. And my partner, Robin Ganzer, really was a big champion of developing an economic strategy. And we brought in HR&A. And so we said, you can't do this park without an economic strategy, because we know how much it's going to cost to build, but imagine what it's going to cost to maintain it. So let's look at the whole thing holistically from the beginning. Let's create a certain amount of development alongside of it that will fund this thing forever.
Question from Peg. Could you elaborate on gateways? How to truly make them invite and heal?
That's I don't have a formula for that, other than I don't, I think that I don't have a formula, but I do believe that a gateway should reflect well, first of all, I believe the whole project should reflect the place, very, very specific context. And the gateway should just be an extension of the project, not a one-off. So, I do think it's an important threshold. We're passing through that threshold. And so, but I think when you combine it with, like, say, really strong edges that start immediately at that gateway, so that it's not this kind of independent element, but it's an integrated element with the entire design, it's a lot stronger than that kind of classic, super sculptural thing that sometimes doesn't relate to the overall project. I think it's much more successful when it's part of the whole fabric.
And then a question from Robert. How much of a consideration is creating habitat for wildlife in your work?
Ooh,
A
huge.
question that frequently comes up.
Huge, actually, really, 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 really big. And it varies so much from whether you're in the city or in a rural landscape. But we truly believe, and it's a deep passion of mine, that when I brought up the topic about the Dakota being part of nature, that humans are part of nature, and part of the dilemma that we're in right now as a country and a world is not recognizing that. And so part of we believe the role of the landscape architecture is to bring nature, offer people an opportunity to be in nature. And that includes attracting animals and wildlife and birds and butterflies into our cities, you know, as well as our country and the biodiversity of what we're putting there. So it's that interaction, you know, of, we hope, being in nature, and that we can realize that we're part of nature, because we believe the way we're actually going to heal as a society, is very much, we believe that's one of the most important things that we can do as landscape architects, is promote that idea. We have, believe it or not, something like 10 quadrillion mycelium in each one of us, and those mycelium are related to the same mycelium that lives underneath trees. We are nature.
I like to sometimes say when I'm teaching some of the biology classes, is that there are so many, right, microbes in and on us that if
Yeah,
you could sort of dissolve away who you were, there would still be, all be able to still tell who you were, because there are that many in and on us. It's just, we are
it's
ecosystems unto ourselves, right?
we
It's
are. Yeah, it's
yeah.
amazing when you learn the biology of a human, and then you
Yeah.
look at it in relationship to the biology of things, and it's wild. Yeah,
It
I
really
love it.
is. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's a little disgusting and wild at the same
Yeah,
time.
it is. It is. There's an incredible person that's speaking about it really eloquently. That's not about division. It's about bringing people together, named Zach Bush. I highly recommend him.
Mm, that's great.
Yeah.
How about do you approach residential work in the same way as your public projects?
Um, the principles. So what we learned when we stretched, you know, to a massive scale, is that our principles held up, you know, because a big project is just a lot of little projects, you know, over and over again. And the difference between residential work, it's very different than public work. You know, it's very intimate. It's almost, sometimes I think of it like a wedding photographer or something.
Mm,
Like you're designing something so intimate for a family. And you know, our real commitment in that work is to understand that family and what their goals are. And um I, again, that the principles that I do believe are the same, though, is that we're trying to create an environment where people want to move outside and be in connection with themselves, each other, and nature. And that's kind of our founding goal of any project, whether it's residence or a massive park or a
mhm.
national park. Um, that always holds true. But there is you know, it's very different whether you're designing for a family of 5 or a city of 8 million.
Yeah. And maybe just one or two more. What has been the community reception to some of your healing landscapes?
We haven't showed it to anybody. How did you
No.
like
What do you
it?
think the reception is going to be? Just
I think the reception is going to be very positive. You know, it's sensitive how we lay it out. We're meeting with some city officials in a couple weeks, to talk about how we would unveil it, because we did it in a bubble. And you know, we want to do it where we really engage a community more than we were able to with the funds. You know, like, again, I said it was all pro bono, but we raised money for the panel, which was great. Um, and we've really invested in it because we think that we could do it in any city in America. It's a bit more of a first world America, you know, I think, opportunity here to bring people together. So, will there be some defensiveness about it? Um, we thought if we mapped the celebrations as well as the tragedies, and really the whole thing is just about bringing people together, that it will be received well.
Mhm,
We think the opportunity here is to find governors and mayors that are really interested in some initiatives around equity and transformation, and show them that there's a way to do this that is a win-win for the city, both politically and socially and
mhm.
culturally and environmentally. So I'd say I've never been more excited about a project than Healing Landscapes.
Well, that is an exciting project. From a pragmatic standpoint, does that take more time and effort on your part and the firm's part to do that?
Well, we just committed to it
Cost.
right away and said, we're going to do this. We want to do something for the time. and we want to do it in our home city to start. So we're going to make beautiful books and hand those out to neighborhoods and communities and city officials. And we have a strategy to unveil it, and then hopefully we'll get a national audience around it so we can talk about this, in TV shows and somehow start to spread this word. We hope it has that sort of momentum. That was the dream.
No. So sort of the answer is yes, but there's a concerted effort to actually make it bigger. So
Absolutely.
yeah, you almost embrace it as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we're at 7:30 or a little bit past 7:30. So
Great.
Shane, I want to say thank you. It really was an absolutely wonderful talk. I really appreciate the how you build a narrative into your work. Like I can see that you actually take a lot of time to actually think of the narrative that you're going to speak, not only through your work, but just in how you actually explain it as well to us, the lay audience, everybody. And it makes for a wonderful talk because you're such a great narrator and orator as a whole. So we truly, truly appreciate it. And thank you for coming and giving this talk to us as a whole.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Susan, because Susan and I did a tour together in Minneapolis at the national convention, and we met that way. So I'm grateful to have got to connect with everybody tonight.
Well, thanks once again. And to everybody, thanks for joining us. Please join us on November 19th for our last talk, and hopefully we'll see many of you again online. Have a great night, everyone.
Take care, everyone.